All right, so today we're going to be S4S'ing some lumber, which usually starts off with joining two faces or 90 degrees to each other and then sending it through a planer. What the joiner does is it sets you up with a nice flat face that the planer and table saw can then take and make parallel faces off of. Well, we're starting off with this superior grade 8/4 walnut, and it's rough sawn, so it has all different tweaks and curves inside of it. It's got a couple splits and whatnot. So we're going to take the full length boards, we're going to chop them down to what we need, so that way we're not having to work that excess length. Some basic stuff that you're going to need is going to be a tape measure, a square, a chop saw or circular saw that you can cut the board or cross cut the defects off with, and a pencil. Now you're also going to need a planer and a joiner. You're going to be seeing us use some, lower end industrial stuff today, but you don't necessarily need that. Your basic big box store planer and tabletop joiner will work just fine. Just takes a little bit more effort and a little bit more time. Now if you don't have access to a planer and a joiner, but you still want to work some high quality lumber by starting off in the rough saw format, what you can do is just go Googling around to your favorite woodworking shops and see if they offer some milling services. So if you're in the Fort Myers area, we're one of them. Come stop by and see us. But if you're outside that area, just go ahead and do some searching. I'm sure you'll find something. All it takes is a simple phone call, and most shops do offer some help. Now, if you look down this board, you can see it's kind of like a hockey stick. So right about here, you can see that it starts bending off. And so this length in this region here is useless for us. We're only trying to get about 82 inches when it's done. So we'll be rough cutting it at about 85, 88, and that'll get that out of there, which makes joining and planing a lot easier. We also got defects such as this split over here that are entirely worthless to us. So we're actually going to end up cross-cutting right here first and then measuring down and getting our length out of it.
All right, so let's get 88 out of this board. So here we go, we're going to make a mark. We'll get our square, make sure our line's straight so we can get a reference for our cut, which will be right about here. There we go. You don't need to mark all the way around the board because you're just going to cut on one side. If this was a larger piece, you'd have to carry this line, which is here, all the way around so you can do multiple cuts, but for this, we definitely don't need to do that. But this is definitely the point or part of the board that we don't want on here. It curves up like a banana. So, I'll hold this down. Let me get my safety glasses. Safety first. So we got it to length for what we need. We'll move on to the next piece. We're gonna get the pieces cut to length first, so we've got a good flow going so we can just joint everything at the same time. So I'll set this one over here. So this next one here, well, after looking at it, further inspection, we have a major defect in this here. Really deep. If we were cutting, 2 inches off of this board, we could definitely use it. But since we need such a long piece, we can't get 88 here, 88 here. So this one is just gonna have to go off to the side. But these are the things you wanna look for, especially if you're purchasing the lumber. If you're at the store and buying lumber, this is what you look for. Don't buy this. This was delivered to us. We didn't get to see our merch before it was brought to us. So we'll just have to use this for a different project, something that we can get something a little shorter for. Like this, great for a coffee table. We're making a dining table, so it's not gonna work. So we're gonna set this one off to the side. Luckily, we do have more back here, and we'll get to that. All right, so now this one looks pretty good. We've got a defect here in the end, this big crack in here. If we can cut this off, awesome. This can be fixed. I mean, we do fill in cracks and voids with epoxy, but if we can avoid it, because the customer only wants us to fill in small gaps and voids if we need to. They want to keep this natural, and I understand that completely. To each their own. We don't have to put epoxy in everything, but boy, oh boy, does it help to fill in gaps and cracks and all that stuff. So upon further inspection, I'm looking. I don't see too many knots. I think we got this edge right here, but like I said, we're gonna throw this over the joiner, the planer. This will probably disappear. Not really gonna be an issue. And like I said, we gotta cut this to width, which is what, 4
inches.
4 inches. So, I mean, we could take it out of this side, so that's not gonna be an issue. looking at this, I mean, we got a knot down here, but we can take, you know, we can definitely get 88 out of this one. It looks great. All right, so knowing that we have way more than enough wood on this piece, because like I said, we need 88, we have this much to spare. I'm going to make a mark because of this defect we were talking about earlier. I'm gonna go just past it as close as possible to save. Well, I guess I'm not saving anything because this is garbage, but we'll get this here. We're gonna lop that off. And then from there, we'll measure out our 88. All right. So now that that defect is taken care of, we're gonna go ahead and measure out the length that we're going for, which is 88. Square. And there we go. And we'll save this board for a future project.
Watch your toes.
Watch your toes.
All right, so this board has a pretty bad curve to it. But fortunately, because we're only measuring 88 inches off to work with and our final measurement's 82, we can cut most of this curve out and bring it down the rest of the way from there.
So first what we're going to do is face joint one edge or one face on this board, so that way our planer has a reference point to get us two parallel faces. And then once we get that, we're going to put a flat edge on one of these sides, so that way our table saw has a flat joint to go off of. And what that does is just make sure you're getting the perfect 90-degree square boards out of the rough sawn piece, because as you saw, some of these are pretty curved, and that helps get rid of that. Now I wouldn't say doing this step first is essential, but it definitely gets you cleaner boards in the end. So now that we got one good face that's pretty flat, it's okay to have some rough spots as long as the planer's got a pretty decent reference point over about 80% of the board. So like, you know, we got a little bit here and there, a little bit on the edge here, but for the most part, it's a nice flat face for that planer to ride on to get you two parallel edges. You can just flip it over a few times and then make sure everything's cleaned up. Now what we're gonna go ahead and do while we're on the joiner is we're gonna go ahead and apply a 90-degree angle off that face. So what we'll be doing is using the fence on the joiner and holding this flat face tight against that we made face joining, and that's gonna apply 90 degrees. And so from after our planing step, we can take it over to the table saw and go ahead and surface that fourth side and get a nice square board. So before you start, you wanna make sure, because you're gonna ride that face joint onto this fence, so that way we're using, that is an awful noise, don't do that guys. We're gonna be making sure that this is cutting our 90 degrees. So we like a little magnetic machinist square, because all you got to do is put that nice and tight in there, and you don't want to see any daylight popping up along those corners. And it looks like we're looking pretty good. I'm not going to change that for nothing. But if it is a little bit off, make sure you go ahead and tighten that back up. And you want to be careful as you're making your adjustment that this magnet may not slide like for the angle. So you want to make sure that you're still keeping that nice and tight to the corner, because if it's touching here, you're going to have your gap down there, but if it's touching down there, your gap's going to be up here. Just want to make sure that's all nice and tight. So the key on this is you don't want any gaps on this fence. The whole purpose of us setting that up is not just for the planer, but a reference point for the 90 degrees. So even though the board wants to ride like that, we're gonna lean that face that we made into that fence, which is gonna change this angle. But we don't care about that angle, we're making that what we want. We're gonna feed it in. So now you can see what I was talking about, how it's favoring this side over here and up along there. So a few more passes, that'll be nice and flat. So thank you for watching our video about how to join a board. Leave a comment down below and let us know if you think joining or having a joiner is necessary or not. Next up, we're going to be planing these, so hit that subscribe button and that bell icon for notifications, and we'll see you there.